Going. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Fly With Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of self-love, self-care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. Today, we're going to continue with part 2 of our hip-hop series. I'm Lady Bounce.
And I am Picket Fence.
All right, so Lord Pickett, you have the Mindfulness Minute for this week.
Yes, this week's Mindfulness Minute comes from the Center of Healthy Minds at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. It says it's an article. There was articling an artist called Just Me, who works with the Mindfulness Life Project. They asked him, how do you envision your work inspiring kids who can relate to you through their own life experiences? His answer was, when I started working for the Mindfulness Project, I had to come up with a way to relate to kids. I took beats from songs that were on the radio, put them in a positive message. My passion is taking this music to people so they can have some relatable and something currently relevant. Hip hop is such a dominant force, and most of the time it has negative connotations. We're healing the misunderstanding of rap and hip hop cultures. We're giving fundamental things that as human beings you need: awareness, presence, and being in the now. I am a human being. I have flaws too. But if I can get people to cultivate their own way of expressing themselves, then why not? It's really cool that the next wave of people could be mindful hip hop artists.
All right, so that leads us into our series, and I will let you introduce our guest.
Our guest is a very good brother who is very, very hard body in the community. And like Just Me said, cultivating minds and cultivating the youth so to have experiences that they can live a full life without the negative connotations. Please give it up for brother Sean Walton.
How y'all doing? Thank you.
Good. So let's jump into this. So what we're talking about is the psychological effects of hip hop on the Black community, good or bad. Of course, we like to shed a shine on the good things, and we hear a lot about the bad things. Media is quick to exploit the bad in our community, including our arts and music. So let's start off by saying, what are some of the positive effects that hip hop has had on our community?
Oh wow! Just demonstrating the power of what we do and how we express ourselves. It's really connected ourselves. Even though we'll talk about how it's lost its way somewhat, or some aspects of hip hop. So first off, let me say there are some things I'll say that will sound general, but I'm not a foolish individual, so I'm not talking about everybody or everything, right? It has really kind of upheld our age-old and centuries-long art of storytelling. We are orators, griots or griots, as some folks say. I don't get caught on. As long as we know what we're talking about, you can say it how you want, right? But it has really showed the power and demonstrated the power of us communicating each other by word. It's also helped to, and we'll get more into that a little later, and I won't claim to be an expert. I was telling folks ahead of time, I am more a recorded message than a Google search, okay? So I know what I know, and I don't try to go beyond that, and I still had an opportunity to spend some time, but, not to be an expert in psychology. However, it has really, truly demonstrated the power of our brain. I don't care what you think about some of the music that you hear out there today, but the way that those young people flip their tongue, the way that they move, man, that thing is amazing. That is nothing short of genius, right? So for the folks out there who say, well, nobody knows what they're talking about. Well, people say the same thing about a foreign language. And it's our nature when we don't understand something to say, that's nothing. Just because I'm not dogging us or nothing. I love us to death. But we humans, and humans is a piece of messy work from time to time, right? A beautiful mess at times, but also just a messy mess. And there are times we'll cast that out if we really embrace and understand that these young people are literally communicating and hearing. Some of them actually hear the lyrics. Man, that thing is genius. So I think it is a demonstration of our genius, an exercise to the brain, good or bad, right? But it is once again just I think folks may be unaware of this at times, but it's actually maintaining our age-old art of storytelling when we use stories to capture and hold all of our history.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. What say you, Lady Bounce?
Well, as somebody who gets the privilege to work with young people every day, I can echo Sean's sentiments exactly. And there are some times when I'm working with them and listening to their music that my age shows through, because some of it I'm like, you like that? Why? And what is he talking about? And how can you even understand what he's saying? And they like, no, Miss Webb, we're not here for the lyrics, we're here for the beat. So I come from the school of thought that, we here for the lyrics, the beat, the danceability, to get in the party hype. But working with these young people has really like shown me like, no, you can appreciate a song for the chorus. We only here for the chorus. We're not here for the rest of it. And I'm like, huh? But it makes sense some kind of way. And I'm allowing them to bring me into their world while also showing them that there's a different way. Like we don't always have to talk about, sex and drugs, and that's great and it's rampant. And then I always try to throw in the little put on my auntie hat and go, the reason why some of y'all have trouble in your relationships is because you're listening to these artists and they make it seem like sex is this great grandiose thing. Well, let me tell you something, baby. It's not that. There are no rainbows and butterflies. There are no fireworks. This dream that they're selling you. So you keep having this casual, kind of relationships and sex and everything. That's not where it's at. But because a lot of the music that they listen to isn't necessarily promoting that, I got to do a little more work when it comes to that piece. But I definitely, appreciate, as Sean said, the beautiful mess that we are as humans, that two things can be true at the same time, or maybe three things can be true at the same time, and it all fits and has a place.
Word up. Word up. Jotted down a few things because, like I said, we want to stay on or at least start off on the positive. Like Sean said, that we will get into how it's been led astray in some aspects. One of the things that I think that has been a positive effect is that it has been a creative outlet for poor kids who couldn't afford art school, who couldn't afford dance lessons, or who couldn't afford musical instruments. It has created businesses in the world of fashion, promotion and marketing, management, and it has promoted art to the community, a free art. Um, it gave POCs, people of color, a way to redesign or create a new culture that has been stripped away from us. As most of you know, that during the slave trade, we lost our languages, our arts, our religions, our family. The biggest part of it is losing family, and hip hop has been a way to recreate that, a way of starting from scratch. As the pioneers of hip hop said, they took broken pieces of nothingness and created something new and beautiful. And for me, on a personal level, hip hop has saved me. It helped me adjust coming from the suburbs at the beginning of my adolescence and moving into the projects. It was a saving grace for me, and it kept me away from that chaotic world that it was a new environment for me that I didn't really understand what was going on. I went from living in a place where I didn't have to lock my door at night to living in an environment where I'm see people getting stabbed up and drug dealers and boyfriends catching the girls cheating and they set grenades in their cars. So it kept me away from that chaotic situation. It helped me. I wouldn't say it kept me away because I was still there, but it helped me through that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, can I just jump in on that?
Anytime, anytime.
Just trying to. I want to respect the rules of the house.
Okay,
I'm
we
a
got you.
believer in that. I'm a talk show style though. You know me. We got to just double dutch. We got to get over
Yeah.
here, right? You just time and get in there and be respectful of one another. But and that is that is the truth. And I was looking at one of the brothers said in the chat that it is a art form that later turned into a tool, right? Yep, it's an art form, yeah, that was later realized as a tool, right? But powerful nonetheless, absolutely. And I'd like to add to that and perhaps, insert, a lot of what I'll give will be an awareness of what's going on today because I keep my ear to the ground, right? And that's old school. So I say a whole lot of old country stuff too, because I'm 53 still all day long, right? So, but so I'm aware of what's going on now. But just to take us back, not being an expert now, years and years ago, had y'all caught me in 2002, I would have been right. But today in 2021, I'm going to connect some of the old with the new, right? And the old is that hip hop in the hip hop is formed. It was a anti-violence movement. That whole New York movement, that was gangs and stuff doing stuff, throwing house parties and yard parties, that call and response thing that started in Jamaica, right? And then, though, so that's what it was really all about. That's that, the whole DJ to call and response, you know what I mean? Where that whole flow of things. And it was truly an anti-violence at a time when things were getting rough. So I'm gonna add to that and say, it perhaps began as still a tool, right? Still a tool that was an art form as well. So I'm not disagreeing with the brother. I'm adding some old man context on it. A lot of folks, if you want to check out Trisha Rose, she's written extensively on hip hop over years ago before this conversation became popular. She was on it, and a lot of them they'll give you the history of it and whatnot. So yeah.
Word up. And say that name again so the people can go make sure we check her work out.
Trisha Rose, Tricia Rose, Trisha Rose. She's been around for like literally. When I look at her picture now on the internet, it kind of makes me laugh and remember how much older I am because I can remember she was a young woman. She still is a young sister, but we've been around for a little bit. We don't look exactly like we used to. And but she has truly have been a legend and really talks critically. And that's where we have to be. We have to love something. We can love something in its original form. We can love its potential, right? We can love the people who do it, but we don't have to love everything that's done. Like I used to tell young people all the time, I wear a variety of different things. I'll come dressed a different way and how I explain to young people, because the young people have a very real relationship with hip hop, right? They have an emotional connection. So we have to be cautious when we critique it. We are critiquing a family member for them. They actually really feel connected. Young people have told me literally, such and such speaks to me. When nobody else is there, then they're there. So the way I approach to make certain that, and also, their family's view. Me being 53 now, I recognize that we've had lots of different layers of generations now. So their mom or their daddy, or sometimes even their granddaddy, might have a different view than I have. So the way I explain it is this. I said, do y'all like what I got on? And usually they do, right? It can be a suit, it can be a skinny suit, whatever. They like it. I said, do you want to wear the exact same thing? It might not be your style, right? Yeah. So you can still like it for me, but you can still critique it and say, that ain't good for me, right? Right? You can still like it for me, but say, that's not good for you. So that's one of the things I say as we approach these conversations. Number one, knowing that I love the art form, but I've never been a super fan of anything, period. So I love the art, but it's always been hard for me to remember the names of entertainers, actors, and all of that. So it's about the balance. And like the sister said, it's just, we have to exist in their world to an extent, but we got to be grown folks who live in their world. Because I may wear some of the same similar things. I'm not wearing it because they're wearing it. I've always done the different things I want to do. So I'm always willing to show up as the grown person in the room.
Word up. That's dope. And welcome to the show, Dr. Duncan. Thank you for joining us. just to recap, we are talking about the psychological effects of hip hop on the community. We wanted to start off with the positive aspects that hip hop has had on the community. When I saw you chatting, so you go ahead and verbally talk about the things that you've seen as a positive aspect of hip hop on our community.
Indeed. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And so far, I've heard a lot of gems being presented about how we interact with hip hop. I would say that the whole origins of how it started, what it is, the reason why I said it was an art form, is because these are things that we utilize to express ourselves in whatever situation that was going on, whether it's the realization of the oppression, whether it's trying to close a gap between having no resource and trying to get a resource, whatever it may be. It was our artful way of expressing and mobilizing ourselves in a reality of what's around us, right? I said later on it became a tool because I believe other people saw the value of this art form, even when we didn't realize the value for ourselves yet. So this whole wait a minute, this thing can be monetized because it does work. The proof of concept was there, and it was there in the ghettos. It was there in places where they didn't know it was an art yet. So psychologically, that's hand in hand. You express yourself through movement, dance, drawings, whatever it may be, and that's the outward way of expressing your mindset or your emotions. So that tool portion was, us as humans, we find a way to try to make things better, but not always better for everyone. So our culture that was made from this art form, right, or art form made from our culture, both ways, I guess, has been portrayed in many different ways that does not reflect always the healthy thing, but nonetheless, it still is what it always has been, an expression, a tool. So it by itself is not a good or evil. It is an isism. And I believe how the people are using it is just expressing either what they are going through or what they can relate to that they're not able to express to other people. So, like you said, on some of those songs, it's like, hey, this is not it. But from our lens, right? We're like, nope, because we've in our life we've lived and experienced certain things, and A plus B equals C. We're like, this is the way it is. But in their life, they're like, Dr. J, this is not how it is in my life. So what they're saying is closer to what I can relate to, even if it isn't my reality. I still can equate to that one sentence that they said and accept the whole song verbatim, right? So I know I can go off on a tangent about this. Long story short, hip hop is another beautiful art form created out of necessity to express. And it still is that art form. It's just used in multiple different ways.
Word up, word up. Um, let's jump into it. Let's dive deep, and everybody feel free to jump in at any time. This is a family discussion, and we're trying to break down the good and the bad of a culture that is now a little over 50 years old. As most of us know, hip hop in modern day and recognized by our government now, its starting date is August 11th, 1973. Um, Hip Hop Appreciation or Hip Hop History Month is the month that we're in, which is November, and both of those have passed through Congress this year. So that's a big leap in itself to have that recognition. So let's break it down. Lady Bounce, let's get into this.
Okay, so my favorite question that I love to ask hip hop fans and people who appreciate the culture. Let's talk about this violence that we have in our music. We are one of the only races who degrade ourselves for pleasure, for pay, for fun, or in some cases as a means to an end, because we do know that this hip hop machine, which is what it is now, and it's a global billion-dollar industry. So we're going to say what it takes to make the money, even if we're not exactly happy with the things that we're saying. So when it comes to us talking about violence in hip hop, is this life imitating art or art imitating life?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. J, I'm going to jump in there, man, because I know you about to lay it. First off, thank you for dropping that extended version of that jewel, man. You know what I mean? And the reason why I say that, and I take the time to say this on here, because I'm always a believer in modeling how we treat and respect one another, right?
Mhm.
And good to see you again. I think the first time I saw screen time with you in a while was way back when, like, I don't know, it was right before the pandemic or during the pandemic, I believe,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. But thank you. But so I always say, we make the mistake of believing that because I'm also insert marketing into this because that's what it is. Go back to Dr. J. It's a tool, right? And it's a tool to deliver information and things like that. But it's also a tool to inform opinions and ideas, right? So it is where we're living in a space now where they've taken it, right? They saw the value into, dovetail off Dr. J. You had folks who saw the value of in the power, not just the value, the power to influence in hip hop. So they decided to grab it by the reins before we did. One of the struggles was our older people did not understand hip hop enough to touch it. So while they backed up, folks who had the money, I'm not criticizing anybody, but let's say if an Oprah Winfrey, a Quincy Jones, and a Bill Cosby or Michael Jordan, all of them would have gotten together and they would have incentivized. So yes, we are the people who celebrate our downfall and dance to our downfall, but we also the only people who get paid for it, right? We're the only people who are incentivized to dance and create to our downfall. So what then happens, because we come from a society that has a history and made its living off oppressing, different folks that got around the people of color and found a place to make it stick, right? Black folks, in quotes. So with that, it is life imitating art now. It is life imitating art the majority of times. And that's not Sean Walton's opinion. We could go through all the research studies, and I say, even if you skip past the research, you don't have to believe me. Look it up or ask yourself, is what I'm saying make sense? If you look at the path of music, if you look at New Jersey Drive back in day, right? If I remember the movie back in the day, New Jersey Drive, right? When they put New Jersey Drive out, first off, I'm gonna make a point. Young people did not know what carjacking was. Young people didn't know nothing about no hijacking. Carjacking came from hijacking. It was a media produced term, hijacking, in order to make the story better. It was a great byline, right? It was a great title. So they called it carjacking. Then you put it in a movie, and folks down here in the Midwest, we're like, man, what? Well, we better get up on game. What happened? Carjacking, auto theft skyrocketed in a new form of auto theft. So now you just didn't have a shimmy. You weren't just popping locks, right? And crashing steering wheels. You was actually taking people out of their car, which comes the term carjacking. And then young people started using the term carjacking. Then the term carjacking came into music. So it is life imitating art. I said all that to say that.
Yeah, that's what's up. I just jotted down a couple things that I would like to say to answer that question, and I'm going to go kind of backwards in my notes. But I first wanted to say that I realized that us as a people, we're natural artists. Even if you were to take hip hop away, we'll find something else, and it has been proven through the throughout time, as far as us as creatures of creation, creating. Like we create is what we do to express ourselves. So we've been taught, I believe, how we are allowed to show up in hip hop in certain areas, because hip hop is technically it's worldwide. It isn't just in one region, and we know this to be a thing because if hip hop in general was just this bad thing, then it should show up everywhere the same way, but it doesn't. So we got to ask ourselves, why is it positive in one area and looked upon as something that they would allow their youth to do, they want them to do, they put programming into, and it's cool for these people, but not for these people. And I think that it is how it's being fed back. If you would imagine an art form being taken from you and then giving you pieces back and saying, we're going to incentivize or we're going to reward you for being this image. Now, let's take the good, bad, and the ugly. These things do exist. There are bad people, there are good people, or let's say this: there are people making choices to present themselves in a bad way, and there's people making choices to present themselves in a good way. And because we are artists, we can make songs about it, we can write about it, we can draw about it, make movies about it, 1, 2, and 3. But in this industry, now that it's become a tool, I believe to answer that question, it depends on who's talking, who's showing the message. Because on one hand, if a child all they knew was poverty and wanted to get out of poverty, and you would give them a microphone or you give them the ability to create music, you'll hear things like what we hear in Jamaica. We'll hear things about how we want better, how we want this one love, how we want this thing. But if you tell them the only way you do that is to have this hard exterior or to be live in this fast lane and it'll get you there, they're doing statistics. They're like, okay, well, let me see. Everyone that does this makes it out, and everyone that doesn't. So they're making a life choice, and they're just making art that's just reflecting what is happening. So to me, the art form, though we have tried to taint it, the art form has never technically been tainted. It is the showing and who's showing it that has been changed up, if that makes any sense.
It definitely makes sense. I talk about it all the time. Programming. Who is doing the programming? As both of you talked about, is we've kind of lost the form and lost control of the form of it being in our own hands. So who is making sure these certain types of messages overshadow other artists' messages? Because looking at it holistically, there could be money made in all aspects of it. So why is it that in modern times that you only see one aspect really getting shown?
That's the $1 million question.
Well,
go ahead, Brother Sean.
It feeds into a larger picture. See, this isn't about, of course, this is about money, but you need to oppress people and keep people foolish. See, when you know your position in America, and I don't mean your position as set by the Creator God, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, your position and what your purpose is, right? Like, we are down on our community about the materialism. And, we know that hip hop, promotes materialism. When I say hip hop, I'm telling you, I'm still speaking general, because we could talk about Toby Weekway. We could talk about picket fences. We could talk about a whole lot of folks out there who's not doing that. So like Dr. J said, why is one thing being promoted over the other, right? But so we understand our place economically, right? And how much money has been invested on protecting America's investment. I tell folks, I'm not being mean. Like, I'm not emotional when I say stuff. So I'm not coming from this is racially based. No, I'm talking about facts. Facts don't have that, right? If you don't like the facts, change it. If you don't like the truth, change the facts. Bottom line, I've said it over and over again. So when you look at the fact that, yes, we are addicted to spending, but that's a self-esteem thing, right? And you got to break through that self-esteem thing, not to kind of puff your chest out when people talk about what I wear, right? And some people brag about how much they spend for stuff. I try to break the mold by telling people how little I spend for stuff, right? So if you like what I do, then you can do it too without selling your soul. So, and I say that because we are all part of our gross national product. Period. And we don't realize, though, even though we are between 13 and 50% of the population, we don't realize what economists say about what a big chunk we are of America's income. Period. So even though we're a small piece and we may be addicted to spending, America is also addicted to our spending. They're addicted to our bad behavior. Many years ago, I did a keynote address at a poverty rally, and I talked about how everybody essentially takes a turn and makes money off our L's, right? Whether it's through social programs, we still nonprofits, when it comes to, substance misuse, when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to all those things that they promote in some forms of hip hop. Black folks aren't the ones who make money on that. You're the worker, but you're not the CEO. You're not the president of that company. So when it comes down to that, we are a cash cow, and that's what it's about. And our destructive behavior, right? Our life has a value to them. So in short, this is why folks do it. This is why they must program. I also think there's a spiritual nature to it too. People always say, well, it's just money, which makes our young people think if they get more money, then there won't be racism. That's been proven over and over and over. Look at Tulsa. They burned it down. Okay. So I'm saying that America cannot afford for us to stop killing one another. They can't afford for us to stop spending all our money on clothes and, walking around with bottles that cost more, that we could pay out.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that not beating us up, because I don't want to look like I'm talking down to us, because I'm not. I love us. I spent my life serving us, right? But it doesn't make logical sense. How do you teach a person's brain to say, I bought a bar, when you know everything you got in your ears is cool, because you may not like Blood Diamond? That's not real, and you got $5 in your pocket. It's bad enough that the corporate interest behind it teach you enough the value in this stuff to say, I bought a bar. So it's bad that you saying that, knowing that you got $5 in your pocket, but your whole crew saying the same thing, knowing you got $5 in your pocket, right? But once again, I'm not blaming the folks. Once we know better, we got to do better. But this is corporate interests that make a ton of money in criminal justice. All while you going to jail, their kids going to Disneyland.
Word up. And real quick, I don't need exact numbers. We don't need to talk exact numbers, but just talk about, Brother Sean, that spending power we have. Let's just do some ballpark figures on the money we spend versus our counterparts.
Oh, I used to know those numbers off top. Hopefully Dr. J can help me with that. And actually, pick a fence. I know you know it, about the rotation of our dollar in our community, one. But let me just say this, because I do not know the exact figures. Let me say this. Here's an example. The NFL boycott. All right. We had a big controversy about it. I didn't say much about it. I wasn't going to fall out with folks who wanted to watch the game. I ain't going to fall out with you behind it. But there were enough people to watch the NFL game. There were enough people boycotting it that they had to march out Jay-Z. I'm not hating. We can't be so emotional. Y'all critique me. We have to critique everybody. See, the problem is that they understand the psychological impact that they can march out somebody who we really worship. Not only does he have good music, absolutely, but he's rich. And the richer he gets, the more we worship him. So here would tell you, other than the figures, he'll tell you the impact, something that you did not know. One of my buddies said to me, hey, man, but white people spend money too. I said, oh, bro, but you don't understand. Target marketing companies spend billions of dollars every single year trying to figure out how to get the black dollar, all while during every recession, while they decrease marketing dollars to other communities that so-called have money, they decrease their marketing budget in those communities and increase the marketing budget in our community. That'll tell you how valuable our dollar is, okay? Mm-hmm. Back when, so when they marched Jay-Z out, it was because we were hurting their pocket. So even if 50% of us were boycotting, even if 30%, 40% of us were boycotting, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was killing them so badly that, one, they did not produce their normal quarterly numbers on Super Bowl commercials. They didn't produce any of that information, but believe this, Jay-Z got a flat out contract by telling us that we were done boycotting. And right after Jay-Z said we cool with taking a knee, they put a knee on George Floyd's neck. I know that's sidebar, but I got to say it because I don't exist in fear. I exist in love, and I don't love individuals. I love our collective community. So just an example, we shook the whole NFL just with our little 50% of, or whatever, 40% of our little 15%. We shut it down.
Word up. And that's good. That's why I said I didn't need exact numbers. That's what I wanted, was that example right there. Because I always say that people don't realize the most effective change, not to us, but to our counterparts, is felt in the pocket.
Yes. Yeah.
We can go back to the down south bus boycotts.
Yes.
That is the most effective change, is when it comes to our counterparts, is affecting the pockets. And like you said, I didn't want to fuss and argue with people. I still haven't watched the NFL since Cap. Just on, and not only because of Cap, but even before Cap, the NFL has had a lot of controversy on for many different reasons. So we won't go into that. We'll stay on topic. I'll let brother Dr. J, you go ahead and jump in.
Just to add some more flavor to the conversation, I want those that are listening to understand that even in our conversation, we're only talking about one layer of the onion. Hip hop is still like we're technically only talking about the consumer that consumes via entertainment. We're not even talking about the participants that create it, the b boys, the MCs, the DJs, the writers. We're not talking even about them because they're almost like two separate populations. You take a b boy, you can go to a hood club. They don't fit in, but they're both hip hop, right? So these different layers, the money that we're technically talking about is just that thin layer of the consumers that buy the look, that buy the swag of what's being fed on one end. But that's not even the same crowd as the shoe heads, as the MCs, as the DJs and whatnot. That's a whole. They just categorize it as underground. In other words, we don't know how to monetize that system, so we're not even going to show that system because that's too diverse. That's so close to home that even if we take it away, they still can throw parties. So we can't count that. So our power is so strong that only on one end have we even talked about thus far in the shaking the industry. In fact, if you think about it, like look at any commercial, hip hop is in everything. They will sell you a country car using hip hop beats in the background because it's in everything. And it I think everyone can agree that the energy of hip hop is powerful. Now, how is it used? How can we keep the consumers thinking of one end and not necessarily having these deeper conversations? Allow hip hop to be so segregated that two hip hop heads don't realize they're on the same team. And I think that that's kind of also that plays into the economic portion is we don't even know our brother. We don't know the true diversity of being next to a brother and sister that involves themselves in hip hop in different ways. Like for me in mental health, hip hop and mental health wasn't even a conversation 2 years ago until it got sexy, right? It got popular to start talking about mental health. Then they realized, like, oh, snaps, like this therapist with locks and tattoos, and you listen to hip hop. Like I could talk about Toby during a therapy session, and people get it. It's a thing that was not realized, but it's always been here. So this layer is deep, and I want to throw that out there because someone listening may feel like, oh, well, where am I at in that? I don't necessarily wear the glorified stuff. How do I participate? They may be lost in the sauce because they're usually not connected. So
Dope, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Because I know Dr. J for a while now, and that's one of the things that I always talk about is how the culture, and this might be a bad effect of it on psychologically on the community, is that it's been so fragmented. And in my being involved in hip hop, I always talk about how I have at least touched the surface of all of the four core elements. I wasn't a great artist, but I did tag. I used to tag just to get up, as they say. I would tag my name. It was a corny name because we're talking 85, 86. I was writing ICJ on ICJ on all the little abandoned apartments and stuff. Later in the 80s, I had my hands in DJing. Well, even let's go back even before I was tagged. I was a b-boy at first. A lot of people see me at my size now. I'm an old man now, a big old man. They don't realize that I used to really b-boy. That was my reason for going out to the clubs. We're all from Dayton, so you might know these: the Odyssey, the Zoo, the Living Room on Sundays, just the Battle Cats. And then, like I said, I went into the tagging and touching DJ, and then I settled in the rhyme. Because I'm a person that loves to think, so that's why the rhyme stuck with me the most. And so my question would back again. My question would be, why is it so fragmented, and how can we piece it back together? And is it possible to piece it back together? Let's, Lady Bounce, you go ahead and start. You be quiet. You've been quiet over there.
Oh, because coming into hip hop the way I came into hip hop was, completely different from most people. So I learned to deflect to the experts, when need be, when necessary. So as I was listening to all of you talk, I was like firing off these different things. I know, Kanye is problematic for us right now. Nobody is, wants to admit they listen to him. But he, to speak to what Sean said, he said the people highest up got the lowest self-esteem. I went to Jacob when I got my advance just so I could be on TV pushing some bling. But that didn't make him feel whole. It didn't make him feel happy. But that's, that again, that's that crux that we live in, where society says we have to have X, Y, and Z in order to be important, in order to be known, to be something, to be somebody, when in fact that doesn't make you happy. I had a student tell me the other day, and it blew my mind, because again, I work in education, but they were, talking about these rappers who they think are rich. So I talked to them about, the Roots video where they talk about how the car is rented and the house is rented and all of these things that they do for show is all rented. And I'm like, you need to get your education first, and then the other stuff will come. And he goes, well, education ain't getting me no money. And I was like, wait, hold on, son. So again, that's how powerful the influence is that it has our youth thinking that this is the way to be, or this is how life is, and that ain't it. So when it comes to keeping us segregated and separated the way that they do, that separation of Black people is well rooted in things that happened before we were born, even in our ancestor days, where you have, the house slave and the field slave and the light skin versus the dark skin, or I like this rapper, so because I like this rapper and I align myself with this rapper, I can't like you because you like this rapper and your rapper talks about this, and not realizing that both of your rappers are talking about the same things in a similar fashion. But we create in ourselves this unnecessary competition, if you will, when not realizing that because hip hop is what it is and it's this global force to be reckoned with, there's enough money out here for everybody to eat. So if you're a person who likes underground artists, that ain't real. Where if you're, a person who really does like those underground artists, you're looking at the mainstream artists and you're like, no, that's not real. Because what's real is the five elements. It's the knowledge base, it's the b-boy, it's the beat, it's all of these things. So you have this whole underground versus mainstream, when in actuality it's all the same. If you love the culture the way you say you love the culture, then you owe it to the culture to dive into it with both feet, head first, whatever, to learn what's on the mainstream, what's not necessarily mainstream, and then find you a balance as a listener and consumer of both. So I can love Kanye and love Jay-Z and also bang Toby every morning on my way to work and bang him in my classroom. I can bang the picket fences of the world who's actually talking about something, but then if I'm having a moment, I might throw on some Little Nas X or some other mainstream rapper that people would look at me and go, why are you listening to that person? So it becomes your personal preferences almost don't get to be your personal preferences because you're only being pushed one narrative. So then the question becomes, are we buying what's available because that's all that's available and that's what they're pushing? Or have we convinced ourselves that we really like this and that's why we're buying it, because they've pushed it on us so much that we've convinced ourselves that this is what we really like. We don't want Toby to be mainstream. We don't want, Iconic Bond to be on the shelves. Like, have we done that to ourselves in some way?
That's a good question. I'm gonna let one of you guys take that.
Good. All right. Um, to me, as I listened, and I was like, okay, what the main principle that came out to me was each one teach one, which is a hip hop principle in itself, right? That is ultimately the way I believe, and this is my perspective, that we are going to be able to conjoin the fragmented pieces of hip hop to allow people to have permission to be themselves. Because I think that's what's lacking now. Like you said, if you like one artist and no one else does, now you're an outsider. Now you're being judged. But that was the whole purpose, right? The whole purpose was for you to be you. There's no one like you on earth. You are the only you. So by default, you technically were already the outsider, but that was okay. You were just told that it wasn't. And through as far as this fragmented section, because we're like, all right, well, what line do I stand in? It isn't an a la carte to us. And I want to preference that to us because other people realize that it is. And they're being able to take the pieces that they like and say, oh, I have the privilege to move around. While we are the creators of, but don't have the privilege of diversifying our interests, right? One of the other things that came out of me listening to what you're saying is we as a culture we're extremely good at being able to imitate. So if we're only shown one thing, we would do that one thing and do it well, remix it, make it to different levels, and not know that it is even possible to do something else until we hear someone else do it. Right? Once we heard T-Pain come out with autotune, what everybody and their mama ran to it, not realizing that some of the things, some of the skill sets that he used technically already existed. The runs that he used existed in country already. We didn't realize that that was for us. We thought that these are segregated things. We can't go into these things because they're not ours. And what we're being told is that this image of an artist is all we get. But we know we can have somebody that listens to a Kanye, a Tupac, turn around, listen to an Eminem, then listen to Toby, and end their day on Kirk Franklin. And they are still as much hip hop as anyone else, right? But that's because all of those things, we're a little bit of all of them. And I don't think that we are shown that we have permission to be ourselves, aka to diversify the art that we engage in. We're being told, this is for you, you stay in line, do not deviate. But what if you feel like you want to deviate? Can we do this? But there's only, I'm not going to keep prolonging going longer. This is deeper conversation if you feel my drift of this. And I think that
Word up.
to answer the whole thing in a sum, to further diversify, we have to show it's possible. We have to show that we have permission to be these things, and it's going to take those that are seasoned in the arts to become present. They may have to learn from the younger generations on what that means today, but it's going to take a conversation of both because there's some kids that don't know that they will be the world's best DJ next year if they only had access to what DJing is, or they didn't know that b-boying can be for you too. I know you don't see none on YouTube that look like you, but that's the reason why you need to exist. We need to show up and then to answer questions, not be afraid to tell youth that we don't know. You have freedom to create because this is as far as we've got. Here's the baton. Run with it, but I want you to run with everything that we know so far, so there's not a cheated race.
Word up. I love that. And Brother Sean, I want you to jump in, but I just wanted to interject one thing that Dr. J triggered in my mind is that when you talked about the not being able to, not knowing that you can take those different pieces. And I think that one thing that has changed for some reason, we all have our theories, and most of us know exactly when that time was that it changed, is that if you look at a show like Rap City in the mid 80s up until the 90s, you used to have a balance. If they played Brand Nubian, they could play NWA next. Then they could play Slick Rick, and then they could play Ice-T. There was more of a balance, and now it just seems like they're running with one program. And we won't go too deep into, because we all know what that is. But back to the fragments, and can we bring those back together? And is it should we? Brother Sean, what would you interject with that?
Well, one, history. See, if we don't teach a lot of what I've been doing, like even in the pandemic, I haven't had as many times to get into schools and directly with young people. A few months back, I brought a piece up to some young people in hip hop just to see, up at Hilltop, just to see where their head was, right? But one thing I can do is my millennial queens, right? And my Z's, I can spend more time with them. That's why I'm real big on the keynotes and the training now, right? Like a lot of times young folk want to jump straight into keynotes. And young folk, I don't mean that as a put down. I mean that as loving. If I call you young folk, that means I answer your call when you call me, right? So if you want to be my peer, I'm gonna be real with you. If you my complete peer, I'm gonna let you go to voicemail because I'll be real busy, right? So I say that with all love. Young folk may not know. I spend a lot of time talking about history with young people, whether it's young people in schools, and learn to tell a beautiful story. Like, you got to remember that they don't know life BC. They don't know life before crack cocaine. See, that's a portion that we haven't had a chance to get into. And they don't know life BC. So they're only dealing with what they see. It's like I tell people, and this is off topic, but on topic, it's all about marketing. Because that's what I'm on. Psychology and marketing are this. You don't have one without the other, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like I tell folks, when people talk about marriage, well, marriage is sure is hard work. Man, who's signing up for that? That's terrible marketing. If I ask you to come to a party and I tell you, look, man, we got to break down the chairs. We got to set up the tables, man. We got to make all the food. We got to carry this stuff in. Then we got to sweep up because people going to be messy. You coming to the party? No. But if I invite you to the party and I tell the story, man, the music going to be doing this and it's going to be doing that, man, the food, man, because we old school. We drinking out mason jars, right? If I'm telling you all of this, even if you can't fully relate to it, you can feel it. So when I talk to young people, whether it's high school or millennials or whatnot, about history, I talk to them about what it was like, the smells, the Willie Bakery. And I tell them Willie's Bakery and Mr. Willie had a paint shop. And this was right here. And then I move on to hip hop or what's going on with rap and the impact that the dope culture had on informing everything and controlling things right now. So one of the ways that we bring folks back together is not to take hip hop away. See, all the folks who have the mindset of taking hip hop away, you got to take it back. There's a difference. And you have to incentivize. This is going to come. We're going to get it out the dirt. I really mean that, right? We're going to get it out the mud and the dirt. It's going to take the nickels and dimes, the $10 t-shirt. I'm coming out with a t-shirt line so I can fund doing the right thing. Because when people want to do the right thing, it costs money, right? So in order to bring folks back together, we have to take those smaller artists, those other artists, we have to literally go nickel and dime, put in little money to incentivize young people in order to make a music that is healthy to our people. Notice I didn't say good or bad. I'm talking about functionally produce good fruit, right? If you say a bunch of households without involved fathers, I didn't even say married. Don't get mad. I said without involved fathers. Listen to my words, right? If we say that's a good idea and you can show me the fruit that's a good idea, cool, I can roll with it. If you tell me it's a good idea that young people making lean now in 5-gallon water drum jugs, if you can show me how that produced good fruit, I'll say it's good. So telling the history, take hip hop back, making certain that the kings and queens be kings and queens. And I mean that. Don't let that just be a word, right? If you're a leader and you got a certain shine, then you have a responsibility. I have a responsibility not to make you think this watch cost all that, to make you think these frames cost all that. Because what I have to do to take hip hop back is I have to take away the power of money. And we only want money is because it makes us feel a certain way. Hip hop used to be about swag, not about how much it costs. You remember that fixing up a car didn't used to be about having a BMW. It would be about having a Chevy and what you could do to it to make it shine. So it was all about your creativity, not about the money. But people do have to make a living. So to summarize it, take hip hop back. Don't take it away. Continue to work on history and tell beautiful stories about how great we were, and don't allow folks to glorify the negative 80s, the portion where we was out in the streets ripping and running and destroying our community, because young people are getting their own twisted version of history based upon music, and allow the kings and queens to step up. The people who have true shine, be courageous enough to say, man, come on, this didn't cost much to nut. Let me tell you how to do it. I make it fly. I break the fly code on all of my own. And I'm not bragging. I'm telling other people within the confidence, I break the fly code. It wasn't because of how much I spent. You don't need that. So when I tell a story, I make it beautiful and I put some swag on it, and I spend some time with young people so that I can help inform their critical thought about music and life in general.
Word up. I love that. We don't have a lot of time, but we got to stretch this a few extra minutes because you said something that I want to dive in before we get out of here. And that is about the crack era and the dope man, and that perspective and how that affected hip hop, and how if hip hop being involved in the crack era affected the community. Me and Brother Sean are close to the same age. I'm right behind you. I'm knocking at your feet. I'm knocking at your feet. So we both were in that era. Like I said earlier, I moved into the projects right at the start of the crack era, at least in our city in Dayton. 85, 86 is when it was really becoming a thing. And what I would say about it is you saw the dope man with all of this, the cars, the money, the girls, the clothes. And one thing is a lot of kids said, I have to be a dope man so I could get that. But then you started seeing rappers having it without selling dope. And that flipped the switch like, I want to be a hip hop artist. A quick story is in 1987, I think, Fresh Tour, Fat Boys, UTFO, Dana Dane, Salt and Pepper, Hair Arena. I went to that show and great show, just incredible. I mean, if you were at that show or any show around that time, it left a stain on your mind. But afterwards, we go behind the Hair Arena and Buffy is on the bus and we catch Kool Roski and Prince Marky D coming out. Fat dookie ropes, the leather jackets, the leather school jackets, and shaking their hands. It didn't make me think of being a dope man. It made me thinking of being the rap man and having that. So Brother Sean, before we get out here, break down the effects of the crack era with hip hop and how those both affected the community. And then Dr. J, I want you to go on from there.
Okay. I'm gonna take my glasses out for a second so folks can see the purity in my eyes when I say this, because people are gonna get mad. But the good thing about it is I'm a still fine man. So it is what it is. I love you. Somebody gonna tell the truth, and I'm gonna tell it. And here's the reality: we need grown folks to come back in the room because it was part of my era that painted this picture. And I can watch us online now, like literally glorifying those days we had back then. Young people don't go about what you say, they go about what you do. And if you all online talking about back when we was doing this and that and we was riding and showing pictures in the club, how about talk about somebody's addicted mama? How about that? How about talking about that some kid had to watch you use their mama and send her back in the house to him? How about you was taking them food stamps and stuff and kids were going hungry? See, if we're going to tell the history, tell the whole history. Tell the ugly of it, right? Now, yes, it was dropped in our community like a bomb. They took a bunch of needy folks and dropped it in there. But that other portion we not telling, and brothers who keep it real, there were some folks who weren't really needy. It just became the thing to do. We had guys who were playing professional sports, and I'm going to where we going here. Guys who were playing professional sports and everything else who did not come back and put business in the community. They put dope in the community. They put their signing bonus in the kilos, man. Something's wrong with that, okay? And not everybody was poor and suffering, but because through hip hop, we communicated the thing right here in the Midwest. Now, there were people who were suffering. I mean, I know people who literally, they had limited options, man. Trust me. So I'm not talking about those people, but I'm talking about the rest of the folks who had middle-class grandmamas and GM working parents, okay, who wasn't missing nothing, who got their first car bought. Let's be real about the fact that we promoted the doughboy image and we followed this, oh, it's just a bunch of poor people. Because hip hop, we heard NWA. We heard the struggle, right? But what that did for us is everything started to, dope informed everything, including hip hop. Okay, because here's the reality. Some of those guys were getting legit money. Other guys was front with those chains and stuff. And the dope boys back in their community was funding them. So when we look at money, like honestly, when we thought a lot of those hip hop artists was getting money, they weren't. They were fronting. And they were using dope boys was using, and I'll say that in judgment. I ain't fit to judge nobody on no topic. Trust me. But the dope boys were using it to launder money. They were using it to launder money. So what that did, even folks who were working at GM, it raised the price of everything. It raised what we needed to have high self-esteem. Russell Simmons, I remember he was working to get everybody out of jail on dope charges. Wasn't working for no. He wasn't pushing any skill programs, any skill trades, any of that. because the reality is it was only the dope boys who could afford to pay $150 for a pair of jeans back then. That was unheard of, right? So now you have folks with regular jobs trying to look dope boy fresh. So dope boy fresh went all through the music. So at some point in time, it got confused between hip hop and dope boy fresh. So that was a terrible time in our community. I'm going to be real. Folks can look at it as glorifying. As older people, we have a responsibility to quit telling young people all those great stories about how great it was. Okay. Oh man, I'm telling you, I see what you're saying on there. And here's one other thing for us to think about, because this will be my little last thing. Go back to that scene in NWA where they were in there and the record exec said, wow. When the record exec saw the power of that they had, man, they took that thing over. Now, it would have been different if they would have just taken it over and put behind it, but they took it over and they reshaped the direction that it would go. Way back at P.D. Pablo, they started to pay us to promote things that was in their benefit. So Seagram's Gin had a record company, right? Seagram's Gin. P.D. Pablo said, shout out to Seagram's Gin because I drink it and they're paying me for it. So anything that happened when it came to selling more dope, you had to communicate that through hip hop. We wouldn't know what lean was if it wasn't for hip hop, many of us. We wouldn't know all those drugs that black folks didn't take in order. What was the one that Dre said it and somebody else? What was the Molly, right? Molly. We wouldn't have. Molly is something different, and they had to repackage it and call it Molly and have hip hop artists mention it in order to get it in our community. So there's always been a marriage between dope and negative hip hop. Not all hip hop. There's always been a marriage, and it's difficult to stop the two of those. And dope destroys hip hop like dope destroys communities.
Word up. Dr. J.
So I have to answer this from a research perspective because I didn't live through it. But I can look to the research, meaning like looking at families. So at one point in time, I did like a Google search of black families. I typed in 1920s, then I typed in the 30s. And I was only looking at the images, and I noticed how there were large families in front of churches. That was like the fly picture back in the day. You wasn't it unless you had a family church photo. Then it became like our first home photo. So I was like, okay, this is around the time where we were allowed to buy homes and whatnot. And then it started being like, all right, afros and this and that. And we was like, all right, cool, power. Then all of a sudden, families disappeared out of the Google search. The closer and closer I got to the onset of when crack cocaine hit the community. And I realized that even Google would tell you that the story has changed. And then so I had to look at my own family. My grandma this year, 101, still living, blessed to have her around to be able to hit me the game, because that means that she was a grown woman in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So saw it from a different perspective. And what I realized is that us as a people, as children to adults, one thing is still true. We're all still trying to pursue happiness. We're all still trying to pursue a way to make something better. Unfortunately, there are certain options given to certain people, so therefore they're making the best decisions giving what they think. So if they look and they only see a dope boy and then they see a mailman, they're like, yo, real talk, this mailman doesn't look too happy, but this dope boy looks like he's getting girlfriends or whatnot, which we're all still in the pursuit of happiness. Relationship is a major kingdoms and fail because of relationships, right? So we are still trying to pursue this happiness and just trying to grab onto any means that we feel that we can either identify with, become, or get into. Some people get into and they're just fronting and they know they're fronting, but they're like, yo, this is the way that I get out, so that when I get onto the other side, I'll flip the switch. I'm a whole other person now that I got money, right? So from that perspective, I see how this thing has destroyed communities, but also the communication about it has switched, and how now moving forward, no one really is addressing the fact that at the bottom line, our kids are really trying to pursue happiness. And really, if we want to help them out, because they're going to continue to try to pursue happiness, that is part of the purpose of life, right? To try to be happy. So if we give them new tool sets to do so and give them more options, I could almost with faith say that the allure of the dope boy would disappear if they knew that they can get happiness without having to cause chaos. Because it isn't everyone's choice. People didn't wake up and say, you know what, on my right, I want to be a dope boy because that is what I aspire to do. This is a lot of dope boys tell other people not to be because they're like, I am doing it out of necessity, and I'm making sure my family does not have to be involved in this. So it's that, and my last part of this is I borrow from the kung fu world, the warrior Masad. Everybody wants to be a warrior until you realize how they have to live, until you realize that it involves killing folks and knowing how it feels to really do it, to go through war and to see it. But everyone wants to allure what they get. They get honor, they get, paid heavily because of their skill set, and they typically get sought after because that is a value proposition. Everyone is after the allure, not realizing what the life is like. And then when you hit the life, then the mental health issues come out because we weren't built for that. So from a research perspective, that's my viewpoint on how this has been incorporated. And once again, hip hop has been used more so as a tool in this instance, not necessarily promoting all the benefits of all the opportunities that exist.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
I have to jump in here because since Dr. J, you brought it from the perspective of mental health, and I'm gonna bring it to you from the aspect of a teacher. This is my life. This is what I spend my day doing majority of the time, is trying to get these young people that I work with to understand that these things that you see or these things that you think you want are really superficial, and they are not things that are going to be lasting and long term. So trying to get them to think of having a future that doesn't involve having all the riches of the world and still being unhappy, it's an uphill battle that I fight every single day,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get them to understand that I see what you see on TV, I see what you listen to, but let me tell you that this ain't that. The likelihood of you making it as a rap star, as a basketball star, or a football star is very slim to none. And the ones who make it are extremely talented. They are almost masters at what they do. So the chances of you being plucked from the obscurity of Dayton, Ohio, to making into some big fancy artist, it's not really gonna happen for you. And then when I break it down to them, I love that Roots video, what they do, because I show it to them in a minute where it talks about, this is rented and that is rented. And then there's a scene in the video where like the dudes are running and they're like, what you running from? Because we've bought into these cliche models of you got to have all the chicks, you got to have all the money, you got to have all the nice cars, and then what? So a lot of them, they smoke and they drink now. They are having sex willy-nilly. And so I often ask them, if you do the things now that are supposed to be there for you when you become an adult, what do you have to look forward to into adulthood? You're not supposed to be smoking until you're 18. You're not supposed to drink until you're 21. You really shouldn't be having sex unless you're sure about what you're doing with your life. Because every time you have sex, the possibility of a pregnancy is there. And not just a pregnancy, but we know that there's STDs and there's all types of other things that come with having sex. And we know about the soul ties, all of those things. So I try to impress upon them, if you do these things now, when you get to be my age, you're going to have to like jump out of a plane every day to get a thrill because you've done everything already. So, I appreciate, you know, brothers like you and other brothers who are in the community, who didn't join us on the panel, but I see them in the community working, because that is the hard part. Is once we get these youth on board and we take control of their minds back, their parents will follow eventually. But at this point, because of what I do, I'm not even looking for the parents to get on board, because we already old, we already set in our ways. It is the young people that are coming behind us that are going to change and save this world. So I got to pour into them as much as I can. So when I am old and feeble and can't make my own decisions, that person that's sitting across from me maybe a kid that came through my classroom, and maybe a kid that came through Sean's after school program or something. So I know that they have the tools, if they've been given the tools and poured into, that they can make those decisions for me when I can't. And I would prefer it if, when I get to that point in my life, when I look across the table, that kid looks like me, because we tend to forget that part. Like, we want our youth to be successful, but it's only this pocket of youth that we allow to be successful, or that we expect to be successful. We got to start putting those same expectations onto our children of color, and impress upon them, this isn't the way to live. There's a better way. And that superficial stuff doesn't last. And like, we had a comment that said, you get these valuable things, but at what cost? So what profit a man to gain everything but lose his soul?
Mm.
So my students look at me and I tell them that, I'm married, and I've been married for over 20 years. And I had one of my students ask me, to the same person? And I was blown away. I'm like, what do you mean, to the same person? Of course, to the same person. But they like, well, my mama done had 5 boyfriends just this year. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not judging your mom. However, if that's not how you want your life to be, you got to start making choices now, so your life isn't that way. So you don't have, kids with this one and that one and all over the world, if that's not how you want your life to be. But we really have to get in there and impress upon them to make choices now that are going to affect your future, and stop thinking temporary. We have this tendency in our community that we think very temporary. We think right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get our young people long term.
One of the things that I want to speak to real quick, if I may, do I have permission to jump in real quick?
Go ahead.
When you were talking about like the kids' dreams and aspirations, because they are so like this big goal. Everyone wants to be Hercules, but no one knows what goes into that, right? And one thing that I found to be very humbling to myself was realizing that, like I believe, Sean, you said this before, we don't even have to take away their dreams. We can reinform their dreams. And that's kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying. It's like, oh, you want to be this big time? Cool. Now, the superficial is thinking that it's going to be there overnight, right?
Right.
And that you need to sell everything that you are to become this thing that you think that you're not. But the hard part is letting them know and showing them the possibilities of, okay, you want to be strong like Hercules. You might not. You might be Samson. However, you know that there's 2 people that have been on this earth with super strong powers, right? You can be the third. You can be like, right? And I think that, and this is my own story real quick. I had went to college in UD, and I had the first time somebody had asked me, well, what do you want out of happiness in life? I answered like the stereotypical black dude from Dayton. I said my house, I said my car, I said my wife and family. That was it. But I didn't have a conceptualization of what that meant past 20. Then somebody next to me answered like, you know what? After I create this business, I want to relax with my family on a yacht. I was like, yacht? Who buy what? You can buy those? Had no idea that this was a thing, because that wasn't put into the program of what I can desire. It didn't take away my desires anymore. But then I asked myself, well, is there something I want that was for me? That if somebody else heard me say, they'd be like, yo, JD, that's crazy. And I'm like, that's cool. It might be crazy to you, but this is something that I want. And how can I get there? Now my teachers, my mentors, and everyone that I talk to can be a guide to me to get to this place that sounds crazy to other people. You know what I mean? So I throw out kudos to everyone that's in the community like you that are having these conversations with the kids. And I want people that are listening to know that we don't have to kill the dreams. We just have to redefine how they get there. Because ultimately, we want them to create a new world that has not existed. Unfortunately, the world that existed all the way back has not been the most positive place. So we're trying to make it better. And that's only going to be by the dreams of the future and allowing them permission to chase those desires. So that was my last tidbit.
Word up. Thank you. Brother Sean, give us some words of encouragement on how we move forward.
Yeah, just wanted to definitely, kind of give a call to action as we do all the, oh, this is the problem. Sometimes we can get a bit heavy. I tell folks, sometimes when I tell people about things I've done, I remind folks, I'm telling you not so you can pat me on the back. I'm telling you so that you can either give a helping hand, realize that I'm a mere mortal. I ain't doing nothing that somebody else can't do. So I figure if you figure regular old Sean can do it, then it can be done. These days, I'm almost at a point where I'm also looking for not for you to just pat me on the back, but for you to take the baton. So I say with everybody, and taking the baton is not just an age thing. We've got older folks who perhaps have not been working with young people in community. We recognize that, like Dr. J said, there are pleasure receptors, and this is science. So beyond this, I encourage folks to go on YouTube, look up just the effects of music in the brain, right? Look up music ethos or however you want to pronounce it, right? And look at how whole cultures, we're not just making this up. This is science. This is something that folks studied it. And because we didn't study it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it also now is a great connection between the pleasure sensor and the logic sensor. That's what the new science says, right? So if you've got this kind of Maslow hierarchy of needs, you can look that up. It's a real quick triangle, right? And those are basic survival things for people. And when you look at some of those kind of pleasure sensors, let's also look at that as a kind of looking to feel good, but also avoid pain, feel safe, all of that, right? And you take that and think about a lot of the content of the music today that we allow our children to listen to, right? And look at the fact that they're making what we would call cognitive or logical decisions based upon that emotionally overstimulated part of the brain. So what do we do about that? One, we check the earbuds. Parents, we have to quit feeling like we being phony if we do not allow our children to listen to what we're listening to. But don't always necessarily miss it. I let Sean Jr., Sharon listen to, my little brother, a lot of stuff, listen to some of the music I listened to because it was a point of conversation. So when you're in the car, don't necessarily always change from the station. Don't think about the fact that they're bleeping it out. The first thing we learned when we were children is fill in the blank.
Absolutely.
So out doesn't matter, okay? Because we fill in the blank naturally, right? You can write it. People give you those little scrambled things to read. You read it perfectly. We don't have any problem with filling in the blank, so you can't avoid it. But there are also things you got to be a grown person in the room. I challenge you to listen to the earbuds, go to places like A to Z lyrics and all of that. Listen to what's being said, even if the young people tell you we're just listening for the beat. Their spirit, their soul, their emotions internalize the words. That is why we have military fight songs, right? When they go to war, they have chants they do when they go to war. So if we allow our children to live in a constant war state by listening to war songs at time of peace, then they're overstimulated. So we got to get in those earbuds. Go to A to Z lyrics. Don't just avoid because they're going to get to the music anyway. Discuss it with them. Don't tell them. Ask questions. Ask more questions than you give information. How do you feel about that? Does our community need more STDs? I've asked questions like that to young people. But also, back to those young people in Hilltop. Now, those young people, for real, they're going to be doing what they got to do because they have to do it. Back to those young people in around the world, around America, and some of those young people are truly suffering, folks. I mean, truly suffering. So I ask you to educate yourself. I ask you, those of you who are older, if you messed it up, you have a responsibility to help clean it up. So if you hustled anything, you can't just say that our schools are terrible now, because honestly, the schools are partly terrible because of the dope you sold. That's just real talk. I say that in all love. So you can't then, because you're doing better now or you've changed your ways, then move to another place and not give back. So I'm not telling you have to give back. I'm asking you, I'm imploring you. When I see those young people up there and I go visit them, I haven't been in a while because it's too painful for my heart. Because right now I can't afford to be a professional volunteer. But I'm going to sling them T-shirts and them keynote speeches like nothing so I can give back. So I ask for you to not only follow our example of caring, to be the adult in the room, even if you still involved in foolishness, right? I don't want to be no hypocrite. Okay, well, when you with little mama in the room, just leave the door open then. Y'all just get it on and leave the door open since you don't want to be no hypocrite. Well, just because you listen to the music doesn't mean that you can't tell the young people that they shouldn't listen to the music, because our brains develop differently and we don't get full development of that gray matter. Now they're found until age 26. So with that, I'm not putting you down. I'm loving you up and I'm begging you, walk with us. And then eventually 53-year-old Sean Walton, who's been doing this for 37 years, I'd like you to walk for me. Thank you.
Word up, word up. So there you have it. That is going to be our self-care assignment for this week. Listen to what your youth is listening to and have a conversation about it. Once again, the self-care assignment for this week, listen to what the youth in your life, whether it be your own child, your nephew, or your goddaughter or son, listen to what they're listening to and have an open conversation about it. Now, before we get out of here, let's get into my favorite part of the show. Doom, 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 doom. Brain science, science, science.
That intro is the best. I just have to say that week after week, I just get a kick out of that. So as you all know, or some of you may not know, in my spare time, I study the brain, which makes me great at my job as an intervention specialist because I understand how brains work, how children learn, and that's why I don't have as many problems and my kids are excelling. Anyway, so your brain science for this week. How does popular music, lyrics, and videos affect our youth? That's all we've been talking about today. So we know that music is a powerful medium. While that power can be beneficial, it can also be a harmful influence. As music becomes increasingly accessible through cell phones, online streaming services, and other new technologies, it is important to understand its influence on our youth. This is something that people get paid to study, is how to make people rise and fall and how to make the money go up. And they use it, they get to it through our youth and through the fact that they know that their brains are not fully developed until they're 25 or 26 years old. And in some cases, depending on what trauma you've experienced, it never develops. You just grow old as opposed to growing up. So anyway, so why and how do youth use music? They listen to it to relieve tension or boredom, to provide a creative outlet, to help take control of their emotions or their mood, or to form an identity. Yes, even forming an identity. We have a lot of students who are struggling with who they are, both sexually, genderly, and as people themselves, and they're finding their places in the music. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not always right. They also use it as entertainment and distraction, which goes back to when I said kids tell me all the time, we're here for the chorus, we're not here for the lyrics, or we're here for the beat, we're not here for this part. So they're using it in a variety of ways. So do the lyrics matter? Absolutely. While some will argue that youth listen to music mostly for its entertainment value and pay little attention to the words, one study has found that almost 1 in 5 male youth and 1 in 4 female youth like their favorite songs because of the lyrics. Other studies have found that there's more importance that youth place on the type of music and the artist. So like I like an artist, so I like everything he does. Even I don't like this song, but because I like this artist, I like this song. So there's some of that in there too. Other studies have found that the more importance youth place on the type of music, the more they pay attention to the lyrics. One group of researchers has indicated that although younger listeners may not understand all the lyrics, they can grasp the general message that it offers. So, does this affect behavior? Absolutely. Music videos that tell a story that may or may not be about the song. How many times have you watched the video and you go, this ain't got nothing to do with this song? It's programming at its finest. These videos provide a specific interpretation of the song that is reinforced every time it's seen. So studies continue to emerge regarding the specific effects on the types of youth. It has been recognized that music video messages is dependent on their age, developmental stage, their sex, and the level of exposure. So how can this help you with your youth? As Sean said, listen to what they're listening to. Have an open dialogue and discussion. We listen to Little Kim, so you can't look at your child and cringe because they listen to Cardi B and Nicki Minaj. Don't do that. Maybe take a Cardi song and a Meg song and compare it to a Little Kim song and what's right or what's the same or what's different or how much more gritty are these lyrics versus these lyrics because they're talking about the same kinds of things, right? We could do the same thing with our male rappers, but the goal and the key is to listen more than you talk, right? So studies tell us that because youth use music in a variety of ways, it's almost a 24/7 programming in their head. So even when they're not actively listening, the things that they have listened to are still running in their head. Same as you. When you listen to music, you turn off the radio, you still hearing that song. You in the kitchen singing it. You wiping the floor, still singing about that same song. So the same thing. So since we know these things, it is important to know that music videos and lyrics and visual content reinforce the messages. So listening to the music, watching the video reinforces the message. So for every maybe Little Nas X song you listen to, or every Boosie song you listen to, throw on a Toby video. Throw on Kanye West's first album, before he became so problematic, before the trauma entered his life and caused him to become a problem in our community that we talk about and we dog about, but we don't address the fact that he's got trauma that he's dealing with, and that's coming out now. So maybe do some of that. So for every ghetto song you listen to, throw on self-destruction. Show them how this big group of rappers from all over the country came together to get on one song to talk about something that was affecting our global community. You couldn't get a posse cut like that nowadays because everybody is so busy. Oh, I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy. When I see him, it's on. Y'all all doing the same thing, right? So balancing everything. Last week, our self-care assignment was to go digging. So as Pickett likes to do on his weekends, go digging. Find these underground artists that aren't getting played, that are talking about something. Look up Rhapsody and Rock and some of these other females that are doing their thing, and listen to them compared to a Cardi or a Megan, and show your kids that there's a difference, that there's some balance out here if you create the balance.
Options. Word up. Brother Sean, Brother Dr. J, we want to thank you for being a part of our series in hip hop for Hip Hop History Month. First, Dr. J, please tell the people how they can get at you.
You can reach me preferably via email at jduncan@mindsunltd.com, or go to mindsunlimited.com. Of course, you can contact me via the social media pages and whatnot, via my Facebook or Instagram, Dr. J Duncan. I believe that's it from there.
Brother Sean, tell the people how to get at you.
You can reach me. I'm building some new stuff, so I'm gonna give you some addresses that I don't live there yet, but the addresses are still up. Okay, so Sean Senior, or Sean Senior AGI on Twitter. Okay, at Sean Senior AGI, a good idea. You can go to at Sean Senior on Instagram as well. Sean Senior AGI. You can go those. You can actually put my whole name in almost anywhere, but I only live in one of those places. I live at Facebook every once in a while, and just SEANL Walton Senior. And if you send me a friend request there, yep, absolutely. Sean Senior is actually AGI, so you don't have to go through the whole .com and all of that, right? Just Sean Senior AGI, you can find almost anywhere. Haven't launched that new Facebook page yet, but you can just send me a friend request. I still got slots. I'm not that popular. You can send me a friend request at Sean L. Walton. We got a senior and junior. Make sure you pick me because sometimes
the more fly and debonair of the two.
I tell you, my son, we almost the same age. Like, he used to walk me to school and stuff. So that's how it goes. So you can find me any of those places. But if you go to Facebook, every once in a while, I'll pop in. And as I lines to Sean Senior AGI, full line of everything: lifestyles, fashion, food, fitness, and all this good head food as well as we working. But yep, that's me.
And as always, you can find me and Lady Bounce anywhere you find your favorite podcast. We're on all social media. That's Facebook, IG, Twitter, and now on TikTok also. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit these two brothers up so that we can all together, keyword together, redirect our community. It's your boy Picket Fence.
I'm your girl, Lady Bounce.
We out of here. Peace.